She was just a little girl, walking home like any other day when fate placed her in front of the one and only John Sena. But what started as the best day of her life quickly turned into a nightmare. What happened next will leave you speechless. Watch till the end to find out the shocking truth. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you respect John Sena. Amelia adjusted the straps of her backpack, the familiar image of John Sena printed on its surface, giving her a sense of comfort. She had idolized him for as long as she could remember. His strength, resilience, and unyielding spirit were more than just qualities of a wrestler. They were a way of life. Whenever things got tough at school, whenever she felt alone or out of place, she would remind herself of his mantra, "Never give up." It was what kept her moving forward, what made her believe that, no matter what, she could overcome anything. It was just another regular day. The sun hung high in the sky as she walked home from school, her mind wandering through the matches she had watched the previous night. But then, as she passed by a small roadside gas station, her steps came to an abrupt halt. Her breath caught in her throat, her eyes widening in disbelief. There, standing beside a black SUV, was him, John Sena. She blinked rapidly as if her mind was playing tricks on her, but no, it was real. The man himself, the legend, dressed in a bright green t-shirt, matching cap, and cargo shorts, was standing right there, casually refueling his car. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. It was an opportunity she never imagined she would have. Her feet moved on their own, carrying her forward before she even had time to think. When she reached him, her voice trembled as she spoke. "Mr. Sena?" John Sena turned his head, his expression calm at first before breaking into a friendly smile. "Hey there, kiddo. How's it going?" Her hands fumbled as she pulled the straps of her backpack tighter. I can't believe it's really you. I'm your biggest fan. I watch all your matches and—" She stopped herself, suddenly overwhelmed by excitement. Sena chuckled warmly. "Well, that's awesome to hear. I appreciate that." Amelia could hardly contain herself. Her mind screamed at her to say something else, but the words wouldn't come. Then she remembered. Autograph. She had to get his autograph. With shaking hands, she yanked open her backpack, pulling out a small notebook and pen. Could you sign this for me?" "Of course," Sena said without hesitation, taking the pen and flipping open the notebook. With careful strokes, he wrote his name, adding the words, "Never give up." Amelia stared at the signature as if it were a treasure. She could barely believe it. "Would it be okay if we took a picture?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sena grinned. "You got it." She pulled out her phone and he leaned in close, flashing his famous salute while she snapped the photo. It was the greatest moment of her life. Just as she was about to thank him, a low chuckle drifted through the air. It wasn't a friendly sound. "Well, look at that," a rough voice sneered. Amelia stiffened. Sena turned his head slightly, his jaw tightening. Standing a few feet away, leaning against their motorcycles, was a group of bikers. There were 5 of them in total. Dressed in leather jackets, ripped jeans, and dark sunglasses, they radiated an air of hostility. The leader, a broad-shouldered, bald man with tattooed arms, tilted his head as he looked Sena up and down with amusement. "Never thought I'd see the day when John Sena turned into a babysitter," he mocked. His voice was laced with disdain. Sena remained calm, his expression unreadable. "Just showing some appreciation for a fan," he said coolly. The biker smirked. "A fan, huh? And, of all people, you waste your time on one of them?" His eyes flicked toward Amelia, his meaning unmistakable. A sick feeling twisted in Amelia's stomach. She had seen people like him before, the kind who looked at her and only saw her skin. John Sena's demeanor shifted. His muscles tensed slightly, but his voice remained steady. "I don't think you want to go down that road, pal." The biker chuckled again, exchanging glances with his crew. "Relax, man. Just making an observation. Didn't mean nothing by it." Sena's eyes didn't leave his for a long moment before he finally turned his attention back to Amelia. "You take care of yourself, all right?" She nodded quickly. "I will. Thank you so much, Mr. Sena." He patted her shoulder lightly. "Call me John." Then, with a final, reassuring smile, he turned and walked toward the gas station to pay for his fuel. As he disappeared inside, the air around Amelia grew heavier. The bikers were still there, and they were still watching her. She gripped her backpack tightly and took a step back, ready to leave, but the leader took a step forward, blocking her way. "Where you headed, kid?" he asked, his voice sickeningly sweet. She swallowed hard. "Home." One of the other bikers let out a low whistle. "Man, she looks nervous," he taunted. "You scared, sweetheart?" Amelia's pulse pounded in her ears. "I need to go," she said, trying to step around them, but they wouldn't move. "You got a lot of respect for that guy, huh?" the leader mused, nodding toward the gas station. "Think he gives a damn about you?" Amelia clenched her fists. She didn't want to cry. She wouldn't cry. "Hey," another biker sneered, "bet you think you're better than us just 'cause you got a picture with some big-shot wrestler, huh?" She shook her head quickly. "No, I don't think that." But they weren't listening. "Thing is, people like you don't belong round here," the leader muttered, his tone darkening, "and neither does your little hero." Amelia's stomach turned to ice. The leader leaned down, his breath reeking of cigarette smoke. "What do you say we teach you a little lesson?" Her throat locked up. Then, before they could take another step, the door to the gas station swung open. John Sena stepped out. His gaze swept the scene, and, in an instant, he understood everything. A sharp, controlled tension settled over his face. He walked towards them with measured steps, his presence suddenly much larger than before. The bikers turned toward him, their posturing faltering for just a moment. Sena's voice was calm but dangerously firm. "You guys got a problem?" The leader let out a low chuckle, but it sounded forced. "Nah, man, no problem. We were just talking to the kid here." Sena's blue eyes hardened. Didn't sound like talking. A tense silence stretched between them. Then, slowly, the leader raised his hands. "Hey, relax, all right? We were just leaving." He gestured to his crew, and one by one the bikers backed away toward their motorcycles. Amelia let out a shaky breath. Sena watched them carefully, making sure they were truly leaving. Then, turning to Amelia, he crouched slightly to her level. "You okay?" She nodded quickly, though her hands still trembled. "They're gone now," he assured her. "Don't let them get to you. People like that, they only have power if you let them." She swallowed, then whispered, "Thank you." Sena smiled. "Any time." He gave her a final nod before heading toward his car. Amelia watched as he drove away, feeling safe again, but what she didn't see, what neither of them saw, was the way the bikers had stopped their motorcycles a few blocks away. Watching. Waiting. Because they weren't done yet. Amelia stood frozen, gripping the straps of her backpack tightly as she watched John Sena's car disappear down the road. Her heart was still pounding, the echoes of the confrontation with the bikers swirling in her mind. She had never been in a situation like that before, never felt so small and powerless in the face of such hatred. But Sena had been there. He had stood up for her. He had made them leave. She took a deep breath and forced herself to move, taking slow steps toward the sidewalk. Her home wasn't far, just a few blocks away. If she walked fast, she would be safe. The gas station had grown quiet. The few customers who had been inside earlier were gone, and the only sounds were the distant hum of the road and the occasional gust of wind. She tightened her grip on her backpack and began walking, pushing aside the lingering sense of unease. But the feeling wouldn't leave. It sat in her chest like a heavy stone, a quiet whisper of danger in the back of her mind. She didn't see the bikers at first. The street was lined with old buildings, some abandoned, their windows dark and lifeless. Street lights hadn't turned on yet, and the setting sun cast long shadows across the pavement. As she rounded the corner, she finally saw them. They were waiting. 5 figures stood near their motorcycles, leaning casually against a rusted chain-link fence. Their leader, the bald man with tattooed arms, was watching her with a smirk. The others snickered, exchanging glances. Amelia's breath hitched. She stopped in her tracks, panic creeping into her veins. Her first instinct was to turn and run, but before she could move, the leader stepped forward, blocking her path. "Hey there, kid," he said smoothly, his voice oozing mockery. "In a hurry?" Amelia swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need to go home." "Yeah?" Another biker, a lanky man with a cigarette dangling from his lips, exhaled a puff of smoke. "What's the rush?" She clenched her fist, forcing herself to stand tall. "Please, let me go." The leader tilted his head, pretending to consider it. Then he chuckled. "See, we don't like being told what to do. Not by some musclehead wannabe hero, and definitely not by you." The others laughed. Amelia took a step back. "Where you going?" the bald man mocked, stepping closer. "Don't be rude, we're just having a chat." One of them suddenly reached out and grabbed her backpack, yanking it off her shoulders. She gasped, stumbling forward as the weight was pulled from her. "Look at this," the biker sneered, holding up the backpack and shaking his head. "You really are obsessed with that guy, huh?" Another one snatched it from him and unzipped it, pulling out her notebook, the one John Sena had signed just minutes ago. "Oh, how cute," he mocked, flipping through the pages. "Give that back," Amelia cried, reaching for it. The biker held it high above his head, laughing. "Oh, you want it? Maybe we should add something to it." He pulled a pen from his pocket and scribbled over Sena's autograph, ruining it. Amelia's stomach twisted. They weren't stopping. The bald leader grabbed the backpack and dumped all her things onto the ground, letting them scatter across the pavement. Her pencils, her papers, her favorite sketchbook, all of it landed in a messy pile. One of them stepped on her ruffled notebook, grinding it into the dirt with his boot. "Oops," he said mockingly. Her throat closed up. She couldn't believe this was happening. Then the worst part came. The leader reached down into her pile of belongings and pulled out something small and humiliating, a spare pull-up diaper she had kept hidden in case of emergencies. Amelia's body turned to ice. "Well, well," the bald man grinned. "What do we have here?" The other bikers howled with laughter. "Are you serious?" one of them snorted. "The little tough girl still wears diapers?" "Maybe she's not so tough after all," another one taunted. Amelia felt hot tears sting her eyes. "Since you like playing dress-up with wrestlers," the leader sneered, holding up the diaper, "maybe you should wear this instead." Before she could react, he shoved it into her arms. The laughter grew louder. They surrounded her, taunting her, jeering, calling her names. She tried to push past them, but one of them blocked her escape. She couldn't take it anymore. Tears streamed down her face. She wanted to scream, to fight back, to run, but she was trapped. "Aw, look," one of them cooed in false sympathy. "She's crying." "Maybe she needs a change," another one sneered. They weren't going to stop. She squeezed her eyes shut and let out a desperate cry for help. But there was no one around. No one to save her. Not this time. Amelia's scream echoed down the empty street, but no one came. The bikers only laughed harder, reveling in her fear. She tried to back away, her legs trembling beneath her, but they surrounded her completely. The leader sneered, still holding the crumpled pull-up in his hand. "What's wrong, kid? Thought you were a big Sena fan. Shouldn't you be tough like him?" He dangled the humiliating object in front of her face, watching her flinch. One of the others picked up her ruined notebook, flipping through the pages. "What kind of loser carries around this junk? You actually think that guy cares about you?" He tore out one of the pages and crumpled it in his fist. Another biker kicked her backpack across the pavement. "Looks like she ain't got much fight in her. Maybe that big muscle head softened her up too much." Tears streamed down Amelia's face as she clenched her fists. She wanted to be strong, to fight back, but her body refused to move. They were bigger, stronger, and crueler than anyone she had ever faced. The bald leader leaned in closer, his breath hot and foul. "You don't belong here, kid. People like you don't get heroes. You get put in your place." He grabbed her wrist, squeezing it hard. She let out a whimper, trying to yank herself free, but his grip was like steel. The others laughed again. "Maybe we should make sure she remembers her place," one of them sneered. Another one reached into his pocket and pulled out a pocket knife, flipping it open with a casual flick of his wrist. "Let's leave her something to remember us by." Amelia's breath hitched. She struggled harder, panic gripping her chest like a vice. The leader grabbed her chin roughly, forcing her to look at him. "Scared now, huh?" he mocked. "Good. Maybe next time you'll keep your mouth shut and stay where you belong." Amelia's mind screamed for someone, anyone, to help her, but she knew there was no one, or so she thought. A deep voice, sharp and commanding, sliced through the air. "Hey!" The grip on her wrist vanished as the bikers whirled around. Standing a few feet away, fury burning in his piercing blue eyes, was John Sena. For a moment, no one moved. The bikers exchanged glances, realization dawning too late. Sena wasn't gone. He had come back. The leader recovered first, curling his lips into a smirk. "Well, well, look who decided to show up." Sena didn't answer. His gaze flickered to Amelia, taking in her tear-streaked face, the ruined belongings scattered on the ground, the way her small frame trembled with fear. His jaw clenched. "You got 3 seconds to back off," Sena growled. His voice was low, calm, but packed with undeniable authority. The leader chuckled, feigning amusement. "Or what?" Sena stepped forward. "Or you're gonna find out exactly what happens when you mess with the wrong kid." The bikers laughed, but there was a slight hesitation in their movements now. "Listen, man," one of them sneered, "we're just having a little fun. No need to get all heroic." Sena's hands curled into fists. "Fun?" His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "You call this fun?" The leader scoffed, taking a step closer. "What are you going to do about it? This ain't a wrestling ring. You don't got cameras around here. You're just an actor playing tough." Sena's lips twitched upward, but it wasn't a smile. It was something far more dangerous. You sure about that? The leader barely had time to process the words before Sena moved. Lightning fast, he snatched the leader by the front of his jacket and yanked him forward, slamming a powerful fist into his gut. The man let out a choked gasp, his body doubling over as the air left his lungs. The other bikers froze in shock. Then everything exploded into chaos. One of them charged at Sena, but he sidestepped effortlessly, catching the man's arm and twisting it before flipping him onto the pavement with brutal efficiency. Another swung at him with a wild punch, but Sena ducked, driving his shoulder into the biker's torso and sending him crashing backward. The lanky one with the cigarette pulled out a rusted chain and swung it at Sena's head. Bad move. Sena caught the chain midair, yanked it from the biker's grip and delivered a crushing elbow to his chest, sending him sprawling onto the concrete. The last one hesitated, gripping the pocket knife tighter. He lunged forward, aiming for Sena's side. Sena reacted instantly. He caught the man's wrist, twisted it violently, and forced him to drop the knife. Then, with one swift motion, he lifted him clean off the ground and slammed him onto the pavement. The fight was over in less than a minute. Amelia could hardly believe what she was seeing. The bikers groaned, barely able to move, the arrogance wiped clean from their faces. Sena loomed over them, his presence commanding. You think picking on a kid makes you tough? His voice was calm, but his tone was deadly. Try picking on someone your own size. The leader, still gasping for breath, managed to glare at him. You think you're a hero, huh? He spat. Sena crouched down, looking him dead in the eyes. No, he said. I just don't like bullies. The leader's face twisted in rage, but he was too weak to fight back. Sena turned away from them and walked toward Amelia. She was still frozen, her hands shaking. He knelt in front of her, his voice instantly gentler. Are you okay? Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. He gave her a small, reassuring smile. You're safe now. She swallowed hard, barely able to process what had just happened. Sena glanced at the bikers one last time. Stay down, he warned them. If I see any of you near her again, I won't be this nice. One of the bikers whimpered. Sena turned back to Amelia, reaching down and gathering her scattered belongings. He dusted off her backpack and handed it to her. She took it hesitantly. Thank you, she whispered. His smile was warm. Any time, kid. For the first time since the attack started, she felt safe. She looked up at him with admiration, the same way she had when she first saw him at the gas station. Only now she knew one thing for sure. John Sena wasn't just her hero. He was the real deal. Amelia stood motionless, still clutching her backpack as the reality of what had just happened settled over her. Her breathing was ragged, her body shaking from the fear that still clung to her like a second skin. But, as she looked at John Sena, standing protectively in front of her, she felt something else slowly replacing the terror inside her. Safety, strength, hope. The bikers lay groaning on the pavement, too stunned and beaten to even think about retaliating. Sena had taken them down so quickly, so effortlessly, that they barely had time to react before they were sprawled across the ground. The leader, still gasping for air from the blow to his stomach, struggled to push himself up onto his elbows. His face twisted in rage and humiliation as he glared up at Sena. You think you're a hero? He rasped, his voice weak but still laced with venom. You think you can just walk in here and save the day like some kind of movie star? Sena remained calm, his expression unreadable as he stared down at the defeated man. I'm not a hero, he said evenly. But I know one thing, You're nothing but a coward." His voice was controlled, steady, but there was a weight behind his words that made the air around them feel heavy. "You and your boys like to pick on people who can't fight back. You think that makes you strong?" He crouched down so that he was at eye level with the leader. Real strength isn't about hurting people. It's about standing up for what's right. The leader's lip curled, but he didn't respond. His breathing was still labored, his pride too wounded to form a comeback. Behind him, the other bikers stirred, some groaning, others too afraid to move. Sena straightened up, turning his attention back to Amelia. "Let's get you out of here," he said softly. Amelia hesitated for a moment, still too overwhelmed to fully process everything. But then she nodded, gripping her backpack tightly and stepping forward. Sena moved beside her, a silent shield between her and the men who had tormented her. They began to walk away, leaving the bikers behind in their humiliation. But just as they reached the sidewalk, the sound of screeching tires cut through the night. A police car rolled up to the curb, red and blue lights flashing against the darkening sky. 2 officers stepped out quickly, their hands resting on their holsters as they took in the scene before them. Their eyes darted between Sena, Amelia, and the battered men on the ground. One officer, a stocky man with graying hair, narrowed his eyes. What the hell happened here? Before Sena could respond, the leader of the bikers let out a pained groan. We were attacked." His voice was hoarse, but the lies slipped easily from his tongue. "That guy, he jumped us out of nowhere." The officer's gaze shifted to Sena, suspicious now. "Is that true?" Sena didn't flinch. His expression remained calm, but there was a flicker of something dangerous in his eyes. "No, that's not what happened." The leader coughed, clutching his ribs. "He went crazy, started swinging at us for no reason." One of the other bikers groaned, playing into the act. "We were just minding our own business." Amelia's breath caught in her throat. They were lying. Even after everything, they were still trying to twist the story to make Sena look like the aggressor. Her hands clenched into fists. No, she wouldn't let this happen. Before she could speak, Sena let out a quiet, humorless chuckle. It was low and dangerous, filled with disbelief at the audacity of the men who had just terrorized a child. He turned to the officer. "You really believe that?" The officer hesitated, looking between the 2 sides. Then his gaze landed on Amelia. She was still trembling, her eyes red from crying, her belongings scattered near the bikers. His expression softened slightly. "Miss, can you tell me what happened?" Amelia swallowed hard. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to be brave. "They attacked me," she said, her voice small but steady. "They stole my things. She hesitated, the humiliation washing over her again. "They humiliated me." The officer's expression darkened. "Is that true?" Sena crossed his arms. "You want proof?" He gestured toward Amelia's ruined belongings, the torn notebook, the scattered papers, the pull-up that the bikers had used to degrade her. "Look around. That's all the proof you need." The second officer, a younger man with sharp eyes, stepped forward and knelt down, picking up Amelia's notebook. He flipped through it, his gaze landing on the defaced signature. His lips pressed into a thin line. Then he looked at the bikers. "You sure you want to stick to that story?" The leader stiffened. The first officer sighed, rubbing a hand down his face. "All right, enough." He nodded to the younger officer. "Cuff 'em." The bikers erupted in protests, but it was useless. Within moments, their hands were yanked behind their backs, cuffs snapping into place around their wrists. Amelia watched as they were hauled to their feet, their faces burning with anger and shame. She felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, satisfaction, and a lingering sadness that people like them existed at all. One of the bikers, the lanky man who had been smoking earlier, turned his glare on Sena as he was led toward the police car. "You think this changes anything?" he spat. "You think you're some big hero?" Sena didn't even look at him. "I don't care what you think." The officers shoved the bikers into the back of the police car, slamming the door shut behind them. As the police prepared to drive away, the older officer turned back to Sena and Amelia. "You two need a ride somewhere?" Sena shook his head. "We're good. Thanks, officer." The man gave a nod before heading back to the vehicle. A moment later, the sirens blared once more, and the car disappeared down the street. The night was quiet again. Amelia let out a slow breath, her body still buzzing with adrenaline. She turned to Sena, who was watching her carefully. "Are you all right?" he asked. She nodded, but there was something else in her eyes now: strength, determination. "I am now." A small smile tugged at the corner of Sena's lips. "Good." He reached into his pocket, pulling something out: a simple black wristband with the words "Never Give Up" printed across it in bold white letters. He held it out to her. "Here, to remind you." Amelia hesitated before taking it, her fingers tracing over the words. "Thank you." Sena nodded. "Any time." As she slipped the wristband onto her wrist, she felt something settle in her chest. She wasn't just a fan anymore. She was a fighter. Amelia stood in the soft glow of the streetlights, her fingers still curled around the wristband John Sena had given her. The words, "Never give up," pressed gently against her skin, a reminder of everything that had just happened, of the nightmare she had just survived, and of the man who had stepped in when no one else could. She looked up at Sena, who stood beside her with his arms crossed, watching the street as if making sure there was no more danger lurking in the shadows. The police car carrying the bikers had disappeared, leaving behind nothing but silence and the distant hum of passing traffic. For the first time since the encounter began, Amelia felt the tension ease from her body. The fear that had gripped her so tightly was still there, buried deep, but it was no longer suffocating. She wiped at her face, her fingers brushing away the last traces of tears. "I can't believe this happened," she whispered. Sena glanced at her, his expression softening. "You're safe now," he said simply. She nodded, but there was something else swirling inside her, something she didn't quite know how to express. A mix of anger, relief, and confusion. "Why?" she asked, her voice small. "Why do people hate me just because of who I am?" Sena exhaled slowly, as if the weight of that question pressed on him too. He crouched down so that he was at her eye level, his gaze steady. "Some people don't need a reason to hate," he said. "They think it makes them stronger, makes them important. But the truth is, it doesn't make them anything. Hate doesn't build people up, it just eats them from the inside." Amelia swallowed hard, letting his words sink in. She thought about the bikers, about the way they had laughed as they humiliated her, about how quickly their confidence had crumbled when they faced someone stronger. "They weren't so tough when you showed up," she murmured. Sena gave a small chuckle. "Bullies never are." She looked down at the wristband again. The phrase, "never give up," seemed brighter under the streetlight, like a promise. "I was so scared," she admitted. "I wanted to be strong, but I couldn't do anything." Sena studied her for a moment before shaking his head. "You were strong," he said. "Being strong doesn't mean not being scared. It means standing back up when someone tries to knock you down. It means not letting them take away who you are." Amelia thought about that. She had felt so weak, so helpless. But now, standing here, she realized something. She was still here. She had survived. She had fought in her own way, even if it wasn't with fists. She had faced them, endured their cruelty, and she was still standing. That was strength, too. Sena rose to his full height, stretching his arms as he glanced around. "All right, kid," he said. "You should head home. It's getting late." Amelia nodded but hesitated. "Will I ever see you again?" Sena smiled. "Who knows? The world's a big place, but I think you'll be just fine." She wanted to say more, wanted to thank him 100 times over, but she could tell by the way he looked at her that he already understood. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and smiled. "Goodbye, John." Sena gave her one last nod before turning toward his SUV. He climbed inside, the engine rumbling to life. As the vehicle pulled onto the road, Amelia watched it disappear into the distance, the taillights glowing like embers before fading into the night. She stood there for a moment, letting the quiet settle around her. Then, with one last glance at the wristband on her wrist, she turned and began walking home. Her steps were steady. Her heart felt lighter. The fear was still there, but now it wasn't all she felt. She felt strong. She felt unbreakable, because she knew no matter what, she would never give up. This was a day she would never forget, a moment of fear, a test of strength, and an unexpected hero who changed everything. But the real lesson, strength isn't just about fighting back. It's about never giving up. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more, and don't forget to like the video.